Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. I just want to take a minute here to say thank you to Noah Reck, who's been our club treasurer for a number of years, but he had to resign because he took a position with LD16's executive committee. And so we need to elect a treasurer. This shouldn't take long. So I'm opening the floor for nominations. Does anybody have a nomination for treasurer for our Democrats of Casa Grande Club? Second time, does anybody have a nomination for treasurer for our club? And the third and last time, does anybody have a nomination? Oh, here a nomination.
I would like to nominate Pat Atchu if she will accept the post.
I will accept the post if there's no conflict of interest between me and Ralph being. That's the only thing I'm worried about.
So if we find out that there's a conflict of interest, we will call for another election. But I second the nomination for now. Any other nominations? So hearing none, can we just see hands to accept Pat as our treasurer by acclamation? Okay, done. So at least we will keep the business of the financial business of our club moving forward. That's the main thing. We'll make sure that Secretary of State Treasurer's reports are done and all of that. If I'll check with Rick McGuire at the state level, and if there's a problem, we can adjust that going forward. A couple of other announcements. There are ballot initiatives, petitions that are still being circulated. We'll have them at events. There's a fundraiser event this Saturday at Eva's in Casa Grande on Pinell. I've got all the petitions. We'll have them available. There's dark money. There's the medical predators petition. There's the I never remember the voting. Kitty, what's the name of that one? The
fair elections.
Fair elections. We'll have all of those petitions available for you. If you were on earlier, you heard Lisa Sander and I talking about candidate yard signs. We're going to have those available. We'll have Kubi and Kennedy signs we've got now. We're supposed to be getting in some Mark Kelly signs, some more Mark Kelly signs, and some of the other candidates. So as those become available to us, we'll let everybody know and make arrangements to get you those signs. There are candidate canvases going on all across. Yes.
Selena was telling me that they have the new pro rights petition out. So when is this petition signing thing? So I can, I'm supposed to hook up with her to get some of those.
Okay, the event I was talking about is this Saturday at Eva's on Pinell in Casa Grande, 4 to 6 p.m.
Okay, I'll let her know so I can get those.
Great. There are canvases going on pretty much every weekend across Pinell County. We've got stuff on our website. Pinell County Democrats has information on their website, and we will continue to get that information out. Come on out and canvass. It's not that hot yet. You know, we have a lot of fun. Look at the pictures that we posted in our newsletter. It's a lot of fun knocking on doors and meeting people and saying, hey, you like the direction that these Republicans are taking? Oh, you don't? Here's what you need to do. So we've got a lot of issues to talk to them about. Come on out and have some fun with us. If you're interested in being an actual member of the Democrats of Casa Grande, you can do that through our website. It's $20 a person, a bargain, because you get to then say you're an actual member. And if you want to go out canvassing or go to the grocery store and let everybody know that you're a member of the Democrats of Casa Grande, we've got these great t-shirts and hats, $20 each. You can buy a combo for 35 bucks. All right. That said, we're gonna move right into our program. As I said, we've got a lot going on tonight, and we want to make sure that our speakers have time to do a great job, and that we have time for questions. So So Allison Jones, I'm going to introduce, who was at one time the chair of the Pima County Democratic Party, and got to know her a little bit when we were campaigning in the old LD11. And Allison's a hydrologist, and I've heard nothing but wonderful things about the presentation. So Kitty told me about it, and then I heard from other people. So I'm excited to see this presentation. Arizona's got a serious water problem, if you haven't heard. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Allison. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Ralph. And Betty, are you going to allow me to share my screen?
Let's
see. Oh, I am. Okay, just a second here. Ralph, while I'm pulling this up, I love your enthusiasm. I would buy any shirt or hat from you. Okay, here we go. I think this is all right. Can you see my screen, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be with Casa Grande Democrats. I am a hydrogeologist. My training's actually in geology. I sort of reconfigured myself to do groundwater work, and that's what hydrogeologists do. Hydrologists mostly do surface water flow, and that to me is a tough thing. I prefer groundwater, working in it anyway. I'm going to turn off my video just so I don't lose bandwidth. Okay. So I'm going to be just talking in general terms about water first. This is a picture that I took canoeing on the Green River last October. The Green River in Utah, and the Green River drains into the Colorado River and then flows down into Arizona and California. Water, it's a very precious thing, and fresh water is probably more precious than you realize. This cartoon sort of shows that. If this was the whole Earth, all the water on the planet would be represented by this droplet, which is actually 860 miles in diameter. That's all the water on Earth, including the oceans. And keep in mind that the ocean is just a very thin film of water over the planet. Then this droplet here represents all of the liquid fresh water on the planet. Most of that, 90% of it or 99% of it is groundwater, and the rest is swamps, rivers. That would be a droplet about 170 miles in diameter. And then you can see this tiny little droplet approximately where Atlanta is. That represents the surface water in lakes and rivers all over the planet, including the Great Lakes. So fresh water is not a big part of our water portfolio. Just a second. I have a problem with this. So you've been seeing these headlines in the paper every day now, sometimes more than one a day. These are just from the last month. This is from the last couple of weeks. And the story seems to be getting more and more grim. And the Colorado River reservoirs, Powell and Meade, are declining faster than predicted. It's news. It's the news in Arizona right now. So when we talk about Arizona's water supply, we have a few sources. And this is statewide. 36% of the state's water is Colorado River water. 18% is rivers, mostly the Salt River. 41%, our largest piece of the pie, is groundwater still, and 5% is reclaimed. Just to be clear, groundwater is not a renewable resource. If you have a well, the water you're pumping is probably several thousand years old. We actually call it water mining if you're using groundwater, because it is renewable, but not on the time we need it to be. And then who's using all this water? The elephant in the room is agriculture, 72%. 22% municipal use, that's houses, neighborhoods, cities, stores, and then 6% industrial use of various kinds, including mining. So you can see that ag use is the big one. So let's talk about the water that Arizona has been using. And we really have been great at managing how much water we use. This shows that the population has grown in Arizona since 1957, from what, 1.5 million to almost 7.5 million. And yet our per capita water use is about the same as it was back in 1957. We peaked in about 1980, then the groundwater management plan of 1980 came into effect, and we've been gradually reducing usage. Conservation is a very important part of meeting these challenges, but you can see this line is starting to flatten. You can't conserve all the way to zero, and at some point it becomes a quality of life issue, how much you're willing to conserve. I know you guys aren't in Tucson Water, but I have this because this just shows you how important it is. This is the homepage when you open up Tucson Water. They tell you exactly where we are in the drought contingency plan, how much Colorado River water we get every year, how much we use. And you can see that Tucson gets a lot more, 144,000 acre feet, than they use. And that difference, Tucson recharges into the ground in these big recharge basins in Avra Valley. So, and they've saved about 5 years worth of water underground. An interesting thing though is also, I think it's a little misleading on the Tucson Water page. They have this graph here on the right that shows how much water they've conserved in millions of gallons since 2009. And they've conserved about 4.2 billion gallons. But the previous graph I showed you was acre feet. That's a lot more water than a gallon. In fact, the cumulative amount of water saved in 12 years has been about 6 weeks worth of water. So, if we can continue conserving at this rate, conservation is not going to get us out of the bind we're in. Everything's important and conservation is important. I'm not telling you not to do it, but I think we need to do more than that. This is a slide. Some of these slides that you're about to see were shared with me by Mark Taylor, who's on the CAP board and a friend of mine. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the Colorado River, the Central Arizona Project and the Colorado River. This is the Colorado River looking upstream from Navajo Bridge near Marble Canyon. And I'm a geologist, so I take geologists through the canyon every year on raft trips, and it's a great time. This is where we load up the boats at Lee's Ferry, which is mile 0. And the important thing about Lee's Ferry is it's one of the few places you can drive a wheeled vehicle down to the Colorado River. And it's also, hydrologically, it's the boundary between the upper and lower basin states. And I'm going to tell you what that means. If you look at this map, you can see this green and the brown outline together make up the Colorado River watershed. And a watershed just means that every drop of water that falls in this boundary eventually ends up in the Colorado River. It either runs off on the surface to a tributary, or which then flows to the river, or it infiltrates into the ground and flows with groundwater to the Colorado River. But just keep that concept in mind. Every drop of water that falls in this outline eventually ends up in the Colorado River. It could be thousands of years, but still. So the basin is divided up into the upper basin up here in green and the lower basin down here in brown. And Arizona is mostly in the lower basin. Lee's Ferry, the boundary is right at Lee's Ferry right there on the Colorado River. So the upper basin states, Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming, and the lower basin states, Arizona, California, and Nevada. Each up basin gets 7.5 million acre feet of Colorado River allotment per year. Let me back up and tell you, an acre foot of water is just, imagine a lot the size of 1 acre with 1 foot of standing water on it. That's an acre foot, okay? It's about 350,000 gallons, but we talk in acre feet here. So, so each basin, the upper and lower, each gets 7.5 million acre feet. And then Mexico gets another 1.5 million acre feet. So this is the total amount allocated, 16.5 million acre feet. Arizona gets 2.8 million acre feet. California gets 4.4 in the lower basin, and Nevada gets 0.3. And of this 2.8 that Arizona gets, the Central Arizona Project gets about half of that, which is then allocated to their customers. The Colorado River supplies about 40%, as I showed you, of Arizona's overall water supply. So let's talk about that allocation of 16.5 million acre feet. Or now let's just talk about, let's talk about that. So what exactly are the natural flows? How much does the Colorado River flow in the first place? Here's, this is in acre feet on the left, and these are the years along the bottom of the screen. And this is the 10-year moving average, this red line. And here's the median, this black line, which is basically about, I'm going to say 14 to 14.25 million acre feet. So right off the bat, when they allocated 16.5 million acre feet, they were allocating more than the Colorado River could provide. They based it all on these years of flow, which were, as it turns out, unusually high. But they didn't know that in 1920 when they did the Colorado River Compact. And so we are in what's called a structural deficit. They're just, even though they've allocated 16.5 million acre feet, it doesn't exist. So, like I said, total allotted, the allocations were determined in a very wet period, 1900 to 1920. This was, not only was it wet, it was one of the top 3 or 4 wettest 20-year periods in the past 1,300 years, they're finding. And there are other books I'm reading one by Carl Flessa from University of New Mexico, who says that estimate was, those estimates that they saw on the graph are probably overstating also. So there's just not 16.5 million acre feet to go around. So let's look at the Colorado River Basin and the major reservoirs. There are 2 major reservoirs, as you know, Powell, and this little black comma represents Glen Canyon Dam, and Lake Mead, and there's Hoover Dam there. So, you know, Powell lets water out, it generates electricity, it flows to Mead. The important number to consider is what is combined in these reservoirs. But you also don't want to let this one get too low, either one of them get too low, because then they stop making electricity. The dams can't make electricity if the water is too low. So I'm going to show you guys some graphs of, well, let me see here. I can't read the top of my screen. Okay, this is Lake Powell in the last 5 years. And it does the same thing every year. The water year, by the way, is October 1st to September 30th. That's how hydrologists look at it. And so coming out of the summer, let's just take this yellow year, for example, that would be 2017. You're about, you're still dry, it's still dry in the upper basin, and there's just not much runoff. And then all this snowpack happens in December, January, February. This is when all the snow falls. And it's about at its lowest right here. And then the snow starts melting. And it melts, and you end up with a high period somewhere in June, July. We're getting close to the high point right now for the year. And then the cycle starts again. And it happens almost every year like that. 2021 is this purple line. Look at this, barely a little blip. Now, why is that? There was snow in the upper basin. The problem was the ground was so dry and just so parched that all the water sank into the ground. It didn't run off and go to the rivers, which fed Lake Powell. And you can see these are the elevations on the respective years. So 2022, this is this year, we're at record lows since Lake Powell was formed. And then this drawing here was a 24-month study done to try and predict what was going to happen with Powell in the next 24 months. So we're about right here on the timeline. I did this on May 8th, but it hasn't changed that much. So this is an actual line, and then the red, blue, and green lines are predictions of what could happen based on, various climatic conditions. And we are really following the red line, which is the worst scenario. We might even be a little bit below the red line. In water year 2022, they're predicting to release 7.5 million acre feet min, most, and max for the probable scenarios. The water level on May 8th was 3522. That was 41 feet lower than the year before, than 1 year ago, and 20 feet more less than predicted a year ago. And this line right here, this 3490 line, this is where the dam can't make power anymore. And we could get very close to that. Now this is Lake Mead, same sort of graph, but keep in mind that the levels in Lake Mead are really controlled by what they do with Lake Powell and how much water the Bureau of Reclamation decides to let out of the dam. And they've kept it, you can see, more consistent than Lake Powell is naturally. But look at this year, it's just really way lower than anything we've ever seen before. And in fact, when we hit 1070 early in the year, when we hit 1070, we got put into tier 1 shortage. That happened, so that was at the end of the calendar year before this graph. And, well, no, where are we? This is right now, 1065, I believe it is. So we are now nearing the tier 2 line, which would be at 1050. And here's the similar Lake Mead graph. You can see that they're able to control these levels more. The most probable scenario shows Mead at about less than 1030. Also that May 8th, 2022 level, which was just 1053, is down 22 feet from last year and 12 feet lower than they predicted. We're tracking on the red line here also. You may have heard about the drought contingency plan and all these tier shortages they do. Those are based on water levels in Lake Mead. So there's one, the first one was actually at 1090, then 1075, there's another cut, then 1050, there's a third cut, tier 3, and then tier 4, you're into, you're down to 1025. And I'm going to show you what that means. But first of all, just to compare July 2021 with this year's, I'm sorry, this on the left, the width of these lines represents a runoff that happens yearly averages since Powell was built. And this line represents the actual that happened in 2021. So you can see just the widths of the line are way thinner. The average is 1.09 million acre feet, and we got 209,000 acre feet in 2021. And the same thing here for accumulation in Meade, the amount that went into actually Powell. 1.85 million acre feet went in. The average is 7.16. So what happens at these various cutoff levels? So the Colorado River Compact, which was done in 1920, allocated all this water. And basically Arizona gets the first cuts. That actually didn't happen through the compact. That happened because in 1968, when Arizona started talking about building the Central Arizona Project, the federal government said, we'll help you do that, but you guys are first in line to take cuts. So Arizona takes all its cuts before California loses anything. So the first cut at 1090 happened and we lost what's called excess water. There is none of that anymore. When you hit 1075, they reduced, the total amount reduced is 512,000 acre feet. Remember, I think our total allotment is 2.8 million acre feet. Then tier 3, when we get down to 1050, they take out another 80,000 acre feet. Then the total bumps up. These are cumulative totals. So by the end, tier 4, we're down 720,000 acre feet. That still leaves most of our Colorado River allotment in place, assuming the river has it. And who loses on these? First of all, Arizona is likely to go into tier 2 at the end of 2022. So we're going to be there, down 592,000 acre feet. And in tier 3, cities take the hit finally. In tier 1, so tier 0, that's basically excess water. This tier is farmers. Farmers take this entire hit, 512,000 acre feet. And then finally, Tucson and Phoenix, and most cities don't really start to notice the difference till tier 3. This is a better thing to show you how it works. So in tier 1, that excess water I talked to you about, agriculture, this is tier 0, tier 1, and then, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is all tier 1. So mostly agriculture takes that hit. Tribes don't take any, municipal and industrial don't take any. So what happens in the upper basin? They do have what's called a drought operations agreement. And that's triggered by water levels in Lake Powell. And they have agreed, by the way, to release little, well, not little, but significant reservoirs all over the basin have agreed to some additional releases. They did some additional ones in December 2021, and they're going to be doing more in 2022. And those are expected to contribute about 3 feet to Lake Powell. You may have heard that this is a little old, but because when I first made the slide, the Department of Interior was considering holding back 500,000 acre feet in Lake Powell. In fact, they've decided to do that. And the reason is because they think they're going to lose the ability to generate power. But what this does is it's going to reduce levels in Mead even further. And it will remove about 6.5% of the water the lower basin was projected to receive. So the impacts of this are a double whammy. There's water uncertainty and there's risk to the electrical grid. It's not all bad news. I saw this talk a few weeks ago on world water scarcity by an expert with UNESCO. And he said that, first of all, we're not alone. All over the world, they're dealing with world water scarcity, and some places are dealing with it well, and some places are an utter failure. And this is what the successful nations and states are doing. And I'm happy to say we're doing all of those. First of all, water meter laws. Know what you're consuming. If you might find this hard to believe, but large parts of California don't meter water. They don't know what they use. Build hydrological models and do the research. ADWR for Arizona is doing a great job. I work with them all the time and I'm very impressed. Land use planning, that's always been a part of our management plan. Water treatment and reuse, don't waste a drop. So we are doing, think about rainwater harvesting, gray water harvesting. We need to do more of those, but that's important. Water efficiency for every industry and every industrial process. I see that in my work. The stakeholders must unify. And we've seen that with the Colorado River Compact and the Drought Contingency Plan. I'm kind of amazed that they've all been able to come together. Hire hydrologists for every land use change should be evaluated and approved by a hydrologist. Water education programs for everyone. I'm not familiar with Casa Grande, but I know Tucson Water does a lot of this. Incentive programs. And the last one, importation and storage of water. That's the one thing we're not doing, but we're talking about it. And actually, the Colorado River is importation, so we are doing that too. And then deprivatization and approve solutions quickly. So I think we're doing all of those things, and Arizona is really way ahead of the curve, but it's a good thing because we're also the ones who take the hit first. So what's next? In the legislature, Governor Ducey has proposed this Arizona Water Authority. I won't go into a lot of detail except to say we really don't know what this means. He's given no detail. We don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but we're willing to listen. There are some things that they say it can and cannot do. But there's no detail. This really needs to be fleshed out. So short term, for all of us, we should be thinking about increasing water conservation to benefit Lake Mead through local and interstate partnerships. The City of Tucson has voluntarily agreed to leave more water in Mead. That just happened last week. In the midterm, prepare to move non-Colorado River water through the system when necessary. That's through the Cap Canal. And then long-term, look to augmentation efforts. That means bringing water in from elsewhere. And you've all heard the schemes to maybe do desal in Mexico or something like that. I think we have to use every tool in the toolbox. And then these are some other things that Mark had put in the slideshow. More actions are needed by all those who share the Colorado River, and stakeholders are already at work on the next set of guidelines in 2026. And that's what's going to happen next. The drought contingency plan expires December 31st, 2025, and we're going to have to renegotiate it. They're already thinking about how that's going to look. I don't have the inside track on that. I wish I did. I want to say don't panic. Where do I foresee all of this going? I do foresee a lot in the long term, less agricultural use. Ag is the big user. It actually saves a lot of money to change to change agricultural land to house a housing development. It uses a lot less water, but unmitigated growth of any kind, I don't think is possible in the long term. I read a very great article by the Pacific Institute, which said, what's Arizona going to look like in 2060? And it basically said Phoenix and Tucson will be much smaller, and there will be a lot less agriculture in this state. And I started thinking, well, 2060, you know, I'll be gone. But then that same day I read that article, I was walking by my neighborhood park, and there was a toddler, a year old. And I realized that in 2060, he won't even be 40 yet. So the people who are going to be living this dystopian scenario, if it turns out that way, they're here now. And it's our job to look out for them and do everything we can. Don't panic, conserve. Money's going to talk, and money's going to have to get us out of this. And I think it can. I'm optimistic in many ways. Any questions?
I have a question, Allison. It's about the agriculture use of water. There's two things. One is there a legislative push to make irrigation more efficient? You know, I've read stuff about drip irrigation, and it's expensive. And while it would require some funding help from whether it's the federal government or state government, is there a push to do that? And second, looking at the types of crops that are grown that are more water thirsty than others, is there any kind of legislative push to make it more crop efficient?
I don't know that there are bills in place, but I do know that they've been talking about that in the committee. I think they call it the Natural Resources Committee. So yes, the legislature is still totally focused on conservation. I think they need to, we always need to be talking about that, but I think we need to be looking at augmentation to new sources. And keep in mind, I was just talking mostly about Colorado River water here and how it affects mostly Maricopa, Pima, and Pinal. There are places, most of Arizona still relies solely on groundwater. And those folks like Cochise County are really in trouble. There are people trucking in water. They have huge land subsidence problems. And that is gonna hit Pinal too, I'm afraid. Pinal, because all their farmers got cut off, they're drilling wells like crazy. There's a 6-month wait for a drill rig for in my job to drill Tucson water a new well. So we're going to be losing Colorado River water, and at the same time we're draining groundwater, which is a finite resource. As long as you're just a regular residential user, you'll get water when you turn on your tap. But I think we need to be talking about augmentation as well. But short answer to your question, Ralph, yes, I don't think there's a bill, but they are working on stuff like that. Kitty.
Allison, to coattail on Ralph's question, you know, I follow all these bills. Part of what scares me in this, and especially in light of what Ralph said, is most of these bills that have been introduced about water conservation and savings with farmers don't have any provisions to say if you conserve the water, you can't use it to just expand more agriculture on your property. And that seems to be the little glitch in those bills that nobody's finding, that you know, just sort of negates the savings. Have you experienced some of that?
No, I think what's going to happen there is that it's going to be too expensive for farmers to use everything that is available to them. Let me put it another way. the folks who are going to benefit the most out of all this and make a lot of money are the Indian communities. Gila River Indian community is going to become vastly wealthy. They are going to be getting the water till the very end. I have a feeling they're going to be selling it and making a lot of money. And as long as farmers want to buy it, I think at the right price, they're going to be able to. I think what's going to happen is the market is going to decide what makes more sense for the use of the water and who's willing to pay the most. And I think cities will always be able to outbid farmers for their water companies. I don't think we're ever going to see that. Water is amazingly cheap these days. A few $100, well, it's almost free, to tell you the truth. I tell people we pay for the delivery of our water. We don't actually pay for the water. We pay for the pipes and the infrastructure. I know I've taken a long time.
If we've got more questions, Allison, if I don't know if you're going to stand, but if people get them to me and I can get them to you and get answers for them, because people will be thinking about these issues for a while. So if more questions come up, we can get them to you for answers. Is that okay?
Yes, and thank you for inviting me. I do have to go because it's getting dark and I need to walk my little dog. But
thank you for a great presentation. It lived up to all the expectations that I certainly had after hearing about it. So thank you very much, Allison. It really gives a lot of great information.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you all. Have a good evening.
So, water is a big issue in Arizona. In these last couple of weeks, we've been confronted with a lot of issues. This Supreme Court leak about what is probably going to happen to Roe versus Wade, and potentially the rights and liberties of other people are going to be on the line very soon. The gun violence explosion across the country. So I think the timing is right for us to hear from someone that was recommended by good friends of Democrats at Casa Grande and longtime members, Debbie Burdett and Larry Praser, who told me about what they heard on a Zoom and asked me to connect with Equality Arizona, and I met Onyekachi at the Rainbow event in Phoenix, and so I'm, as the chair of Democrats at Casa Grande, sometimes you have to wear several hats. So this is the hat I got. This is the flag that I got there, and so. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Onyekachi, who's going to talk to us about Equality Arizona. He's the field director, and something about the organization, the introduction, and what's going on in the legislature and what we can do to help support the rights of every American, because it's all human rights.
Very good. Thank you, Ralph, for having me. Thank you, Democrats of Casa Grande, for having me. This is so wonderful to be here and to be sharing what we do at Equality Arizona and what the LGBT community in Arizona is faced with these days. And I'm going to share my screen. I prepared a very short presentation because I thrive off of conversation, and I thrive off of questions as well. And so I want to give lots of opportunity for that. To begin, what is Equality Arizona? Equality Arizona is an organization that does political work, particularly policies, and politics work for the LGBT community across Arizona. We've mostly done work in the Phoenix area, but this year we've actually been branching out further beyond the Maricopa County to reach LGBT communities as north as the northern border and as south as Tucson, to understand the complexities and the the casualties, what the everyday sense of LGBT folks across the state. The work that Larry and Deborah had an opportunity to see was a new effort by Equality Arizona to share insight and information about the United States political system. The organization Equality Arizona, found out that there are lots of communities that are unfortunately unaware of how the US political system works. And so they commissioned me to develop a course on what that is. This small piece that I'll be sharing with you today is on citizenship, which is exciting. Is an opportunity to understand our individual role within the political system. Typically, it takes about 2 hours, an hour to 2 hours for this talk. It's definitely been shrunk down for this presentation, and we try to provide an opportunity to talk with communities through virtual events as well as online events. I'll have lots of links for you at the end, but for now, I'm just going to share some information, particularly about how we, Equality Arizona, tries to operate with the political system that we have and how we try to make change for the LGBT community. And to do that, I would like to start with the beginning. The beginning. For us, when we talk about politics, when we talk about the United States, we're talking about the Constitution. And within the Constitution, within Section 1, there is a clause that's broadly known as the Citizenship Clause. And with this clause, it states some important things that we should keep with us as we get to some of the current work that Equality Arizona is doing. So this clause establishes the legislative branch, but it also establishes some requirements for becoming a citizen. It states that you have to be born in the United States, and it states that you have to be naturalized. So there needs to be some type of process. We call that today the citizenship test, or and you say that you take the test, you take the oath, they check your background. Hopefully you are familiar with this process. And with this process, both the naturalization process and birthright, so being born in the United States, we get an understanding of citizenship in the United States. And this is the first recognition of citizenship in the United States. And so bear with me, hold that information with you. And what else is also important is that when you are a citizen of the United States, most of the time you're a citizen of that state as well. The United States has a very interesting history where it started first as individual states, right? The individual states mattered most. And then we, as states, came together and said, hey, we're going to do this united thing and come together as a nation. And so when you think of citizenship, is on the level of the state, but it is also on the level of the nation. And that's important to keep with you because the first rounds of policies, it took about 30 years after the establishment of the United States in 1776 to 1790. And in 1790, we get the first understanding of who in particular are applicable to be citizens and who are not. In this Naturalization Act, we get the establishment of the Immigration Office or institution, bureau within the United States. We also get the test, right, the marker for becoming a citizen. So it's a free white person with good character. And I'm sure they had a very standardized way of trying to figure out of good character during those times. But what we also get in this act, we get an understanding that African Americans, Black people, are not able to be of citizenship at the national level, but could be of citizenship at the state level. So in this act, we get a dichotomy. We start to see how different people, different communities of people have different access to citizenship. In the next rounds of policy, it really gives highlight to Native American communities. And with these acts, the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek of 1830 and the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924, mind you, that's still 80 plus years away from 1776, the starting of the United States, the proclamation of the Citizenship Act, clause in the Constitution. We get a moment where Native Americans are highlighted within a policy, and that community, Native communities, are beginning to have access to state recognition, right? State citizenship, and also national, federal level recognition through national citizenship as well. The next community with the 14th Amendment in 1865 and the Naturalization Act of 1870. And so in this moment, we actually see the federal government, federal policies going back to kind of rectify some stands that were made in the earlier policies. So trying to bring African-American populations into the recognition, full recognition as citizens of the nation, not just citizens of the state. And so we have the move where African-Americans are freed from their status as slaves. And then we have the recognition on a federal level that African-Americans are US citizens as well. We have a similar move happening in the Asian population. And when I say Asian, I primarily mean Chinese and many times Japanese as well. We get the Page Act of 1875. This allows Chinese women in particular be able to migrate to the United States and participate within those naturalization processes. So be able to be recognized federally as well as statewise, state recognition as citizens, right? And then we have the first time that a policy is written to take away from this broad inclusion efforts is actually the Chinese Exclusion Act that prohibited Chinese laborers from becoming citizens in the thought that, unfortunately during that time, that Asian Americans, Chinese Americans will not leave. Chinese immigrants will not return home. And so this is similar to African American populations. This is another moment where at the federal level, we have a policy to specifically exclude a community from being recognized as full citizens. And since the 1800s, we've had lots of opportunities to rectify not only the Chinese Exclusion Act, it was actually overturned in 1922 by the Cable Act. And we also had a moment to make additional efforts to allowing communities have access to citizenship process, the naturalization process. And this, particularly the Immigration and Naturalization, Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 removed the formula used to regulate the influx, so the migration of persons from other nations. So where are we today? We are doing some amazing things at the national level for the LGBT community. This would be the first moment in US history that we've turned away from discussions on race and ethnicity to discussions on sexuality, and particularly highlighted the ways that individuals that are of the LGBT spectrum, so not heterosexual, as well as individuals that present differently than the way that they were born, right? So have gender differences than the norm, have an opportunity to have full citizenship. And so some ways that Equality Arizona is moving towards accessing this full citizenship for the LGBTQ community is by having a survey, trying to understand their needs during these challenging times. Having a program like this, the public education program, sharing information about how our political system works with not only you today, Democrats of Casa Grande, but with all that are willing to learn and willing to discuss what democracy is and what it can be with us. Equality Arizona holds lots of events in person and online, as I mentioned prior, and has lots of opportunities for volunteering online as well. And for those that would love to share their story, because I know each story is different, and so we would like an opportunity to hear your story. And we have a special way to capture your story in our Arizona Equals conversation. Is a story bank where we're collecting folks' experiences about how it's been being LGBT in Arizona and beyond. And our website is equalityarizona.org. You can contact me directly if you have questions or concern at onyekachi@equalityarizona.org. And if you would love to get involved, if you have the time, we can surely use your help. We have a policy that we're working on at the federal level. This is also a motion to get LGBT communities recognized nationally. It's called the Equality and Fairness for All Act. And this act, we will be phone banking on May 28th, which is this weekend, June 2nd and June 9th, to get the word out about this policy to allow LGBT persons be able to live and work without discrimination, without worry of losing their jobs, worried for not being able to access medical attention or being able to access housing, as well as a slew of other public accommodations. And I will end here and open the floor to any questions or thoughts that you Democrats may have. Do I pick someone? I see Kitty's hands up.
Do you, on your education program, do you target certain age groups within this too, so that you customize for, like, say, high school kids versus, talking to us much older adults?
We don't, primarily because right now, we're not talking to high school kids. So Arizona actually has a nice, wonderful program, but I think what happens is a lot of young people, maybe they miss that course or maybe they don't fully understand yet. But I think with Equality Arizona, we really try to bring the material to life, right? Because we have an opportunity where you can learn with us and as well as be able to do some of the work with us. So learn about civic engagement as well as come with us to Canvas, come with us to phone bank, come with us to do some of this work that gets done to make democracy work as a whole. Did that answer your question, Kitty? Yeah, awesome. I see Larry and Deborah. Go ahead.
I was wondering, for the phone bank, do you call into a central number or do people get see the phone number that it's coming from?
We have a wonderful system that you just have to bring your laptop or have access to your laptop, and we provide the numbers, we provide the mechanism to call folks. It's a special system called Every Action that you will be able to dial some of our previous volunteers and share this wonderful policy with them.
Oh, I like that. That's a good way to do it. Thank you.
No
For
problem.
the Democrats here, one of the things that we got involved in our discussion group is for senior citizens finding a place that does not discriminate against the LGBTQ. And you don't understand at times how this impacts an individual, especially a single or a lone senior member of society today.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. LGBT problems are not only young people problems, but it follows LGBT community members throughout their lifespan. And so I appreciate you, Larry, for saying that. I want to ask of a little thing before I share the floor. Could we take a Zoom picture? It would mean so much to me and so much for the organization. Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. A lot of good information. And I believe it was Martin Luther King who said that the arrow of justice bends in the right direction. I don't remember the exact quote, but you know what? We've reached the time now where we have to grab that arrow and not let it be ripped away from us and continue to pull it in the right direction, because these are times that are where every citizen, everybody in our democracy is being threatened on a scale that we have not seen before. So let's stay attentive and engaged and active. Onyekachi, thank you very much for your presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
So what we need to do is get out the vote and get people to fill out ballots and get those ballots counted. And we need to help that process along. And so, as I mentioned earlier, thanks to Lisa for getting us an elections expert who's going to give us some valuable information. The primary election and the general election will be here before you know it. We need to know what to do to keep our election integrity intact and how we can help do that. And so I'd like to welcome from the Pinal County Recorder's Office, Dana Lewis.
Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So when Lisa asked me to attend this evening, I was under the guise of understanding you wanted to understand what it is to be a political observer, not only from the election standpoint, but also where you can be a political observer in early voting activities. Am I on the right sheet of music, folks?
Yeah, Dana,
Okay.
I was asked specifically about the special boards because
Okay.
we have been recruiting for you for the special boards, hand count boards, and then the special board that just came up. And yes, because you are a guru, not only as the assistant to the recorder, you have also been in the elections department as well. So I would anticipate a few questions there.
Okay. So in the past, election officials or deputy recorders would act in a bipartisan manner. First off, Lisa, that shirt is rocking. So we, as bipartisan members of the department, would go out and we would act as a special board. However, but Pinal County is growing, and we feel that it be necessitated that we reach out to the parties and we have you be part of that process. And our reasoning for that is dual faceted. One, if I have to have 5 early voting locations open, possibly be able to utilize our voter van and still have early voting going on, I only have so much staff. The other thing is, it's never good to have an observer follow us to go do a special board when I could just bring you into the fold and have you be the special board instead of just following us around. At least that's our intention. So what does this look like? So statute states that in the event a person becomes confined and they do not have the ability to vote an early ballot from their home, or they are confined, that's the key word here in statute, they have the ability to call into the early voting department and request a special board. What that means in layman's terms is the person maybe has recently moved to an assisted living facility. They have recently been hospitalized, or possibly they have been confined. In confined, I mean they are not in felony status. However, they are at jail. You know, some people would rather sit their time than pay their fine. So we respect that, and we identified that that's okay. But that person still has a right to vote. So what we do is by utilizing special boards is we take a bipartisan team. They do receive some hands-on training, and they do get access to county resources, i.e. a car, some clipboards, some really cool color-coded lanyards, and a GPS ballot transfer box. So they're given some resources. They go out to said jail or assisted living facility sometimes, and they deliver an early ballot that has been not voted yet. And the person then confirms, yes, Lisa, the GPS is new. We'll talk about that later. So they deliver this ballot to the person. They confirm the person's identification, confirm that they have the right ballot style, and then they are there to assist. What does assist mean? We're in a bipartisan team, and that means if you have somebody that is handicapped, they may have to use an express voting machine. That's an ADA compliant machine, so they'll take that with them. Or what they might have to do is, maybe their hands are a little shaky, and so they're just there to offer some emotional and moral support that they got this, and that's how they assist. At no time is that ballot ever removed from that voter, or is another person able to vote that ballot for them. That's why we have the special election board, is because we're checking each other, and we're having a great trust and transparency in this process. After that ballot has been voted and placed in the ballot affidavit envelope, they then put that in a ballot transport box, and they put a GPS lock on it, and they bring it back to the early voting department. At that time, it is then the signature is verified, and then it goes into the process for pinging, processing, reconciliation, and then tabulating. A lot of words. A lot of stream together. I do tend to talk a little bit fast and give a lot of information. So at any time you need me to, I can slow down. Like I said, in the past, we did this as election officials. We believe that, as statute says, we need to get the parties involved in this. And here's my thing. I say this often when I talk to the parties where we do community outreach and voter education events. If you're part of my process, you're part of my progress. That means you're not part of my problem. And that's where we want to be, guys. We want to be together as a team. And so being bipartisan in this and going forth and conquering this beast that was the past, that's where we want to be. We want to be in it together. So that's special election boards. We also know that currently you guys are signing up with your party chair to be observers at the polling places. But know that you don't only have to be an observer at election polling places on election day. You also have the ability to watch our early voting process in person at our different places. Those are all at satellite recorder offices, Casa Grande, Apache Junction, Maricopa, Florence, and Santan Valley. What that looks like is at any of those satellite recorder offices, a person walks in with identification, says that they're there to vote early in person. Their information is just then checked in the Arizona voter information database. Somebody then retrieves the correct ballot style for that person as set in their Avid record. The person then is confirming that this is their ballot, and as per their statement says, they sign their ballot affidavit, they go vote that ballot, and then they put that ballot in that affidavit envelope, and the affidavit envelope goes into the ballot box there in early voting. So you can watch that whole process, and as people are able to vote for the 27 days prior to the election day. And that is between July 6th and July 29th is when early voting occurs. You also have the ability to be here observing early voting signature verification. Again, those dates are July 6th through July 29th. And that is actually watching as our people who have been trained in signature verification certification. They are there pulling the ballot affidavits that came in from the United States Postal Service or the solitary ballot drop boxes, and they're checking their signature affidavit against their voter record. They're also able to observe where our ballots are on camera. All of our ballot drop boxes in Pinal County, ballot drop boxes are on camera and on county property. So people have the ability to observe what that looks like, and see that traffic. Why are we doing that versus some other things? I think if you have the ability to watch that, then maybe the compulsion to go stand 75 feet away from that ballot drop box will go away. And so that's what we're hoping is if I can show you that we can be safe and that we're actually doing this, then maybe people's need to want to be there 75 feet away with some binoculars and stuff, that'll go away. And that's our hope. The other thing is these GPS locks are brand new. This is a first ever in the state of Arizona. This is our trial period for it. We're going to see how this goes. And we have bipartisan ballot courier teams that will go to the ballot drop box locations and the satellite offices, retrieve said ballots, early ballots, put them in a locked courier box, and then put a GPS lock on them. So we used to always lock the boxes. Now we've got a GPS lock on them. The reason for that is in the past, we knew we got those funny calls during major elections that we heard that Pinal County's ballot boxes are out in the middle of the Saguaro Desert in a school bus that's been abandoned. Well, I can say, of course, that's hoax. Of course, that's dis, or malinformation. However, I need to be able to put my money where my mouth is. And this is our ability to do that. Because if I know where my ballot transfer boxes are at all times and I can see them on the screen, I can make sure nobody's gone rogue. And again, this is first. We are kind of being a trendsetter on this one. So we're going to go forth with hope and hope this part of the program is prosperous. The other place for the recorder's office you can be an observer is during the provisional ballot signature verification process. Does everybody know what the provisional ballot is? Okay. So in the event that people at the polls had to use the ability to vote a provisional ballot, they have, after a federal election, 5 days to cure that signature. Those ballots are transferred from the elections department to the voter registration department, where that signature verification is confirmed and those signatures are cured. You have the ability to be there as an observer witnessing that witnessing that process. Of course, with the elections department, you can be an observer on election day at the polling places. You're also able to be there watching live feeds on their central tabulation, early tabulating, and their early board, or able to be there in person. And election night, as the ballots come in from the polling places, you have the ability to also be an observer at that location. I talk fast. I give lots of information. That's special boards, which we are actively recruiting volunteers for. I will say I've just brought one of your people on. I don't remember. I had a lot of applications today, so I apologize if I can't differentiate between the reps and the Dems, but I don't play favorites, so we're pretty good. But yes, special boards. And we currently do have openings for a couple of temps, paid positions in the early voting department. Those are hired, I think they start June 13th, and they'll work through the election cycle. And if things go well, we'll bring them back for the general as well. Okay, questions?
None of the ninjas applied for any of these positions, did they? I mean, just kidding.
No, nobody's going to be wearing pink shirts around here. And so, no, and I take it in light. I understand what they were trying to do, and I respect everybody's processes and thought processes. But no, we have not. We are using our locals. Why? Because, elections, in my opinion, and what I've witnessed in Pinal County, we do it at the local level and we do it well. And so that's who we want to see. I've often talked with Lisa and even Nancy Hawkins about this. Quite honestly, our community is based at the precinct level. Our precincts that's our building blocks of our communities. These are the people we go to church with. These are the people we see at the grocery store, where we go to, mom and dad's clubs for schools. These are our community members, and that's who needs to be part of these processes. Bringing somebody in from out of state, or I don't know. I don't think there's a great thought process behind that, but please understand that as political observers, and what statute allows is, in the event the DNC or RNC decide that they want to send people because of the political climate or their candidate committees, they are able to send observers to our events as well.
I know Stephanie's got a question.
Yes. My question was related to the amount of time needed for those of us who are working full time for like the special boards. What kind of time commitment would be needed?
So special boards are pretty awesome that way. I would give you about 48 hours notice to let you know that we'd had a citizen who'd requested a special election board. I'd let you know where you would need to converge at, and then where we would be transporting to. And we like to say that it stays within Pinal County. However, but we did have to go out to an outside county because somebody was in a car accident and was in a hospital in another county. So we do that, folks. They're a Pinal County resident. We're going to make sure they get a Pinal County ballot. So that does happen. So typically we're looking, you can travel the entire state of Arizona in about a day and return. So it could be a long day, but it does happen. But because we've asked for a few volunteers to sign up for this from each party, it could be that, you're, number list 3 on the list of Dems. So you don't get the first call. So you could be the second call. We're not going to keep, picking up the same person, especially if they're volunteering, because they do work full time. So thanks. That was a great question. Who else?
All right. So again, if we get more questions directed toward us, Dana, we'll be in touch, and hopefully you'll be able to answer those questions. I do want to say thank you very much for your patience, and we had a full agenda today, and I appreciate you staying on and giving us this valuable information.
Ralph, I remember I remember meeting you. You were a poll worker, I think, or an observer in Eloy, and I met you.
Yes, yes.
Folks, as the new assistant to the recorder, I am at your disposal. I am there to answer questions. I can be reached via email at dana.lewis@penel.gov. It's Delta Alpha November Alpha dot Lima Echo Whiskey Indian Sierra at penel.gov.
And we
Yeah.
will get that information out to our group so everyone has that. Again,
And
thank
Lisa
you
knows
very
my
much.
number.
Thank you, Dana.
Have a great one, folks.
All right, so our last speaker tonight is going to be brief, I know, but give us some really good information. And it's Chris Cronin with Mission for Arizona. He's the regional organizing director, and he's going to talk about some Pinal County strategy for Mission for Arizona. Chris?
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me on tonight. And thank you, Ralph and Casa Grande Dems for, again, having me. This will be my first of many meetings that you will see me on. So I'm excited to get to know everyone and get the ball rolling down in Pinal. As Ralph said, I am one of the regional organizing directors working with Mission for Arizona. I have a really big and interesting part of the state. I have legislative districts 12, 13, 14, and 15 in Maricopa County. And then I have all of Pinal County, which is, of course, red, rural, and remote. So a good mix of suburban and rural. But, you know, both pieces of the state that I have and both pieces of each county are incredibly important. We want to not only re-elect Senator Mark Kelly and Rep. Tom O'Halloran, but we also want to ensure that we're supporting our statewide candidates after the primaries. And most importantly, flip the state ledge. In my region, I have 2 of the 5 targeted legislative districts in the state, one of which is LD 13 with Rep. Jennifer Pollock. And then more relevant to Pinal County, we have legislative district 16 where Taylor Kirby and Keith Seaman are running. And some data that I was digging into a couple of days ago was the voter registration data in LD 16. And in LD 16, there are 42,000 registered Democrats, 43,000 registered Republicans, and 50,000 registered independents. And I see a huge opportunity in those 50,000 independents. So what we want to do and what we've been working on statewide is contacting our low propensity Democrats and independents, so folks who don't traditionally turn out for midterm years. And we want to make a plan with them to vote. We want to get a commit to vote card from them. It's a little postcard that we'll collect and send back to them with information on how to cast their ballot. But we also want to register these folks on the early vote list. So we're doing this both at the door and on the phone. Recognizing that it's starting to get very hot. We want to ensure that we are still doing the work that we need to do to turn these folks out and make volunteering accessible. So our strategy is shifting more towards the phones, but of course, having face-to-face conversations at the door is one of the ways that we're going to win. And then the second piece to my strategy outside of the rough and tumble, I like to call it volunteering, is coordinating with our partners at the local level. So I've been chatting with Ralph a ton, I've been chatting with Lisa. I just got connected with Doc at Copa City Dems and LD 16 Dems, and I've been chatting with Kendra at the ADLCC. And you know, there are so many organizations that are going to ask folks to volunteer this cycle to do similar work, and I think everyone in Pinal County wants to coordinate so we don't burn out volunteers, we're not burning out voters. So we'll be coordinating with as many stakeholders as possible to ensure that we're not burning folks out. So that's a broad overview, and I know that was a lot of information. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm also going to drop my phone number and email in the chat, so you can reach out to me personally and ask me any questions that you have. But a couple of upcoming events that we have include recurring phone banking, and I'll drop a link to sign up in the chat there. We phone bank every Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I will also be working on bringing on a full-time organizer so we can stand up some more canvases in Pinal County. But for right now, we'll be canvassing every other week mostly focused in LD16, and I'll be communicating with Ralph and Lisa to get that information out to you. Okay, so happy to take any questions that you have.
Oh, we spoke yesterday, Chris, and you mentioned that we'd be getting some Kelly signs. So
Yes.
can you get those over to the Pinell County office in Coolidge, and then we can get them from there?
Totally. Yeah. I'm working on securing boxes of signs out of our lovely storage unit in Phoenix, and we'll be taking those down to drop with Lisa and then further distribute those signs. So I'll be in touch with Ralph and Lisa to get those distributed to folks who would like some signs. And I see Kitty has a question.
Yeah, we also have a Pima County, several precincts here.
Oh yeah.
That, you know, go all the way down to the Ajo Highway. I'd like to connect with you. I've got your phone number, and we are setting up events here too. And we have a brand new field organizer here, Madison Peterson with ADLCC, who just started last week. And we're connecting there. So we want to get your material too, because when we're going out with our candidates or phone banking, we want to do everything to reelect the senator too.
Totally. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's interesting how my turf is split up because I only have Pinell County, but we also do have a team down in Pima. And we've kind of taken on this statewide initiative to be as coordinated as possible and make sure that we are coordinating with stakeholders so we're not stepping on toes. So I'll get you in touch with those folks.
Okay. Well, where we bridge is the fact that, yeah, we're physically, you know, on the west side of Tucson, but we're working for the LD16 Pinell candidates. You know, Taylor and Keith are our candidates just as much as Pinell. So yeah, we definitely want to connect however we need to.
Totally. Yeah. Shoot me a text. I'll be happy to get you in touch with the regional down in Pima so we can continue the coordinated effort across the state.
Thanks, will do.
Yeah. And then I see Joseph has
it's Deborah who's going to ask the question. For both you and Ani for Equality Arizona, I've done phone banking and I've done text banking. I have to say, phone banking, I rarely got anyone to even answer, and I think they might have just deleted automatically. But I got a lot of responses in text banking, and it was set up so that it wasn't my phone number that came through, thank God, because I would have gotten a lot of disgruntled people. But I think with texting, you sometimes get a little part of a message before you discard it. And I don't know if that's something either of you would consider text banking, where the person who does it is anonymous. And I think it was for the Georgia election for the senators that I participated in the text banking, where I was calling people, this in 2020 for Arizona candidates. And a few people actually spoke to me. A couple of them were almost courteous, but for the most part, it just seemed like it was an exercise in rejection. And I really like the texting better, and I don't know if that's something that you might consider doing.
Yeah. I know for electoral campaigns, we usually roll out texting closer to the election. That's more targeted on, like, you know, here's your polling location. This is how you cast your ballot. For right now, the conversations that we have on the phone and at doors, we see as the most effective. I'm not quite sure what Ani has. What do you think?
Yeah, right now, we are utilizing phone bank mostly. I do understand what you're saying about being able to get answers and engage with folks, but I think similar to what Chris has said, we have a strategy where we're holding back on texting just for a bit.
So with phone banking, it's the numbers. I've done it, and there's a lot of no answers and hang-ups and whatever. But if you stay at it for a couple hours, you get a few people, and it's I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
I had Chris. I don't know if this is probably not your purview, but my understanding is that we lost Victor, our ADLCC Pinell County person. He's taken another job and is no longer with us. And I don't know if Kitty, if you know anything, is he going to be replaced? It seems like Pinell County gets kind of short shrift when it comes to these things. And
Ralph, I sent you an email earlier, but I'm
Oh.
sure you're planning, no, I'm sure you're planning this meeting and it didn't have a chance. Yes, I met today at lunch with Madison Peterson, and she's been hired. Victor got a fabulous offer to go to work for a voter registration outreach group here. And it's quite a step up for him. And he's good. He's got about 5 years experience working in Latino voter registration with Lucha, Mi Familia Vota, and so forth. And so he's moving on to that. Madison has a lot of experience working with a number of groups, women's reproductive rights groups, and as well as working with a number of voter registration groups. And she's studying pre-law at the U of A. She just finished up Pima College a short time ago, and she has a lot of skill. But what I said, and particularly in my email to you and Lisa and a couple of others, Doc, on our leadership people who are working to create these volunteer teams, Kendra created a calendar, and we really need to start putting the various events on that we're going to do, whether it's for Mission or for anybody else, so that we know who's in what neighborhood. We don't need the names of your volunteers to do this. We just need to know what the dates are that you're planning. And we need to put that on this. It's a Google Calendar and it's easy to use. If you don't already have access, if you send a message to Kendra, she will give you access. Lisa met with her and Chris and some others and got a commitment that we will start putting on there in each of our clubs and groups, our local community groups. Some of us have territories that we do. I live in one where we do volunteer activities. It's ADLCC right now still is planning this. This makes me cringe. They're still planning to do their Saturday and Sunday canvassing from 12 to noon. I mean, from 12 noon to 4 o'clock. Well, I don't know what's happening where you are, but we really need to be getting out there 9 to 11. And then in the evenings in my neighborhood, my side of the mountains, we also can on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we have done 5:30 to 7:30. And so we need to be talking about when are we actually going to do the canvassing that accommodates the summer hours. This is very different. So we need to be looking at that and publishing it onto that calendar. And thank you, Chris, very much for participating with us to help create that, so that we can be sure that we're sharing the materials, the literature, all of that, and for as many candidates as we can possibly endorse.
thank you, Kitty. Yeah, Chris had to leave. He had another meeting to go to, but we will. I know Debbie's been getting access to that calendar, and Kendra sent me the link to have access. So anything that we do, and if we have any trouble, we'll get in touch with Kendra on how to do that. But we will post anything that we have going on that as well. So thanks for that information. So we're going to wind down. I want to end with telling you that our next meeting is June 23rd, and that's again 6:30, Thursday, 6:30. It's by Zoom, and we are going to try a little different format with that meeting. We'll see how it works out. We're going to ask people that want to, we'll send out this information by email, everybody, but we're going to ask people that want to just engage in a conversation for 30 minutes before the actual meeting starts. No topic necessary. We'll talk about whatever we want, socialize, get to know each other a little bit, and hopefully we can get to know each other. And once we start meeting in person, we will see each other and we'll have developed some personal relationships and friendships that we can develop further. Additionally, for the next 3 meetings, instead of focusing on candidates, well, we're going to invite candidates, but we're going to be more topic oriented like we were tonight. So July, we're going to focus on moms demand action for gun violence. We're going to focus on what we can do to advocate for some legislation. I know they're talking about maybe doing some lame stuff just to say that they did something. We're gonna talk about what we can do to really put pressure on legislators to do something about this gun violence. So we're gonna have a speaker from Moms Demand Action, and then we're gonna have a discussion where we can spend a little bit of time talking about that issue. That's July. So no, that's June. July, we're going to be focusing on reproductive rights. I'm going to try and get somebody, whether it's from Planned Parenthood or another one of the organizations. We're going to do the same kind of thing where we'll have a presentation and then have a discussion. What can we do? How can we engage? How can we become more active with these organizations to push legislators to know what our values are? And then the following month, it'll be focused on public education. And hopefully we'll get Kathy Hoffman or some education people in here to give us a presentation and then talk about what the presentation means to us and how we can be more active. So we're going to try that for the next few months to try and get more intergroup communication and get to know each other and work together and develop some relationships. And despite what Stephanie Sigla is saying, it is not too hot to canvass. We can knock on doors and like Kitty said, we do it early in the morning or in the evening. It stays light out for a long time, and 5, 6 o'clock, it's not as hot. Everybody, thank you for being here. We will continue to provide information on all the issues and what events are coming up. Thanks to everybody for being here, and we'll see you. See you on the campaign trail. Thank you.
Hope to see you Saturday.